everyone. Welcome back yet again to Just Jossin. I am one half of this dynamic duo, Sabrina Hannon.
And I'm Jasmine Heron, the other half of these Wonder Twins. Today, we are talking about two of my favorite episodes. We are talking about Ted with John Ritter and then Bad Eggs.
I did not know these were two of your favorite episodes. You're a little weird.
They're so ridiculous. I love them.
Yeah. They are ridiculous. I will give you that. And would we agree that these are Monster of the Weeks?
Oh, yes. These are definitely Monster of the Week episodes.
You know what I want to do?
Fine. We'll do it. We're going to have to make like a little sound clip of this going properly for the future to like insert in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll give this a whirl. All right. 1, 2, 3. Monster of the Week.
Monster of the Week. Monster of the Week. Monster of the Week. Monster of the Week.
I think that went very well for us never having practice.
It was lag, but whatever, we're fine.
All right, so on to our first Monster of the Week, Ted.
So Ted came out, I think it was December 8th, 1997. So this is just, just after like the Thanksgiving period. We're now moving into like the holiday season. And it was written by David Greenwalt and Joss Whedon. So Joss had his fingers all over this one. And it was directed by Bruce Seth Green. Bruce Seth Green is not the same as Seth Green. Like when one of the other writers like started questioning Joss and was like, "Hey, robots?" Like Joss was like, "Listen, it's a hellmouth. A hellmouth lets us do anything. A hellmouth like sets off its little crazy hellmouthy vibes and gets us to like have mad scientists with super cool powers because hellmouth."
And I mean, it's not the last time that we're going to see robots.
No, it's not. So, I mean, the first time we saw what was I, Robot, You, Jane, which was Demon Robot.
Yes.
And now we have, like Uberman Robot, like 1950s patriarchal blech robot.
Yeah, I mean, when people talk about like, oh, life was so, like when they get nostalgic for the 1950s, this is really the man that you're looking at. It's not all that great.
Okay, so 1950s, like the stereotypes of the man at home and the woman running the house, hate. 1950s fashion?
Great.
Love. Love so much. I'm like, that's the part of the 1950s I enjoy. Back to Ted. So we start off with Buffy, and this is part of the continuity, saying that the Order of Taraka has been called off. They are no longer hunting her. The contract with Angel's sources let her know that, she's good. She's fine. And, she's just kind of off in her own head. Xander and Willow are arguing about the captain and Tennille, who were from, like, the 70s. Like, I feel like this was before their time.
Yeah.
But maybe they only had really, like, poor channels on their television, and that was a sort of variety show thing they were able to watch.
Nick at Night type deal. I mean, my favorite show as a kid was I Love Lucy, so...
This is true.
But yeah, I really identified with Buffy when she was like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I was like, me either.
Yep. And they're really getting into it. He's like, oh yeah, she's like the puppet master and, pulling all the strings. And she's like, oh, I feel like he's, very strong. And which again, I guess kind of links into what we're talking about of gender dynamics. Like,
Yes.
I don't even know the captain and Tennille, but already they're seeding this conversation about gender dynamics and who's in charge.
Really setting us up.
Yep. Really set. Even though, they're priming the pump, even though we're totally unaware of what the captain and Tennille are.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Buffy arrives at the house and she like puts her key in the door and the door is open. And so she's, telling, Xander and Willow, hey, hang on, step back. And she hears her mom say no and gasp. And then she walks into the kitchen and, oh Lord,
Mm-hmm.
that moment.
Jim Ritter is smooching on Joyce.
Uh-huh. And
And
Joyce,
Jim Ritter is Ted.
what?
And Jim Ritter is Ted.
John Ritter.
John Ritter, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, there's some leaning going on, and she's wearing this long black dress that has cutouts in the back,
Mm-hmm.
A fantastic neckline and backline, and this is her introduction to her mother's boyfriend,
who she didn't know her mother was seeing.
Yeah, she didn't know her mother's. I don't know what the dynamics of having a teenage child post-divorce are, but I feel like it would be appropriate to discuss with your child that you are dating someone, that you are seeing someone before bringing them into your house.
Mm-hmm. Where your child may bump into them.
Like, before the opportunity of seeing them in the house, you have to say, I'm seeing someone. Like, she was like, I was thinking about how I could phrase this or how I could introduce you to. Say something before bringing the man into the house.
Because also, what if Joyce hadn't been in the room and Buffy thought he was an intruder? Like, or any teenager, what if they think it's an intruder, a whole bunch of issues.
No. Oh, I didn't think you're home early. Like, don't you know where your child is?
Right?
He's 16 years old. You should know a little bit more.
This isn't like when she sneaks out of her room. But yeah, and right off the bat, Ted seems oddly nice. Like a little, like he's laying it on a little too thick. He immediately wins over Willow by offering her free technology upgrades for her computer, and Xander by giving him food, because that's all you need with Xander. Here's a cookie. I love you forever.
He's a teenage boy.
Oh yeah. And like, I definitely remember my mother convincing my male friends to like do some stuff at our house, like help with some things, and then giving them like ribs afterwards as payment. Teenage boys. But yeah, Buffy is not thrilled about what's going on, but she's also she's at least in the beginning kind of sort of trying ish. I mean, for just finding out that her mother has been lying to her and knowing full well if Buffy had done this to her mother, Buffy would be in a lot of trouble.
Well, Buffy is doing it to her mother with Angel.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. And Buffy knows she would be in a lot of trouble.
Like, there's definitive, like, I expect more from Joyce because she is the adult. Like, Buffy is the screw-up teenager who is allowed to screw up. But like,
and clearly Buffy is just modeling her mother's behavior.
And so Ted is making mini pizzas, and he's brought over his own cast iron skillet. He's like, like, you must use the cast iron skillet for these mini pizzas to fry them after you bake them. And so Buffy says, I'm fine. Because, that awkward point where he's talking to Buffy and he's saying things and Joyce is just in the background overhearing.
Mm-hmm.
and it's very smooth the way
Yeah.
that he says it, and he's talking at a pitch that is letting his voice carry,
Mm-hmm.
so that Joyce is the most important thing to me, and you're the most important thing to Joyce, so you're very important to me. And Joyce is all swoon, and of course she's quite taken with it, and then saying, this is very important to me, and he goes, no, 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 this is very important to us, we really,
Mm-hmm.
already inserting himself. And this is the first time she's meeting him, and it's fast.
Yes. Yes. That is a red flag. Like the inserting of himself so heavily and doing like we stuff, and really not letting Joyce control the situation with her child.
Yeah.
He's stepping right over her.
Mm-hmm.
And like what he's doing is performance art, 100%.
Yeah.
So Buffy's, feeling a little off about him. Everybody else is like, Ted.
Mm-hmm.
And then so Buffy with her I'm fine, then she goes out patrolling with Giles and just starts beating the ever living out of the vampires, to the point where Giles is like, Buffy, I think it's staking time now. Like,
and then because she's still wailing on him, he just sits down with this, like, I think he's got a briefcase or something, like, in his lap. He's just like, oh, I'm just gonna sit on this bench and wait for it to be over.
Because what is he gonna do? Like, he can't stop the Slayer, like, when she's this into her sleigh.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a dangerous situation. So I'm sure at that point, Giles is probably like, something must have happened today.
Yep. And he tries to talk to her, and she's not really, like, offering it up.
Yeah.
Although she does go off on a little bit of a rant about guys moving into her home with mini pizzas, and so I have to say that actually one of the reasons that Buffy survives this is because she doesn't eat the food.
Yes, exactly.
Like, so she does not. He immediately is basically lacing everybody's food with Dormitier.
Not basically, he's doing it. He's drugging everyone.
But it's ecstasy. It's like basically like a light for ecstasy light. So he's giving them a trank that's also making them all happy fuzzy.
Like Black Beauties in the 1950s that housewives used to take. That's where that comes from. Like that, that's 100%, I think, what Joss Whedon was
aiming
getting
toward.
at.
So then the next day she's at school, and Xander's like, Ted, and then he's like making fun of her. He's like, you have parent issues, like, and with the song and dance. And Buffy's like, yes, but I do feel like maybe something's wrong. He's real, like, this is moving really fast. And then she turns around, and there's Ted. And Ted's like, mini golf. And Buffy says, no. And Willow says, oh, yeah, no. And Xander's like, screw you, Buffy. I want picnic. Like, what the hell, Xander? Like,
to be fair, Xander's been drugged at this point.
Xander has been drugged at this point, but there has been a few times where Xander has just completely railroaded right over Buffy's wants or feelings to get what he wants. And, and to control her. Like, I would like to point out the times where he was like, yes, Buffy must patrol and stuff like that, just because he wants to control her. And no, not okay. So,
this time it's because he wants food.
This is because he wants food. He wants pizza. And again, I do enjoy a good pizza. And then, of course, not just pizza, but pizza and cookies.
Yes. The very dangerous suspect cookies. So they wind up going mini golfing. And Ted says, like, oh, so you've been doing a lot of studying. Good, then we should see that reflected in your grades.
Yep.
And Buffy questions her mother at that point, like, why the hell does he know about this is the second time he's seeing her, and he's going after her about her grades. He has no right to mention that, to do anything. Like, not his job. No.
And and yeah, and then he's totally like overstepping these boundaries and parenting, where Buffy slices her ball, and Joyce is like, okay, well, we just won't count it. We're here to have fun. And he's like, no, 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 of course we're going to count it. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And what we teach her is what she takes out into the world. He's automatically inserting himself as a father figure. And Joyce is like,
and saying that she is a bad mother. Like, that is the not so subtle undertone there.
Yep. And Joyce just backs right down. And
she has a point.
Yep. And so, Buffy cheats. Yes, she does cheat. She's like, oh yeah, hole in two, whatever. Because she's already sulking. And
she doesn't want to be there. She wants this to be over as fast as it can.
Oh, and then the music, the like suspenseful music as there he is. And this scene where he just suddenly turns sinister. And he's got the sunglasses on, so you can't really see his face, but he's talking and he is beating his. I have to say, I have been in situations before where someone is doing something and you can just they're not doing anything overt, but you can feel the violence. The violence in the way they open a cupboard, the violence in the way they shut a door without slamming it, but you feel it. And the way that he is whacking that golf club against his leg and talking to her so intimidating. Oh my, yeah.
And then he says he's going to slap her.
Like, he says, I will not stand for that malarkey in my house. Malarkey? Joe Biden? Like, hold on there, 1950s. And he said, and she says, well, it's a good thing I'm not in your house. And that's when he tells her he is going to slap her like that smart. I always say, I'm going to slap that smirk right off your smart mouth.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, and very much so, what Joss Whedon has laid out here is how abusers work. And they do target single mothers. Like, it's just a fact. That's what they do. That's what someone who's looking specifically to abuse your children and you, that's what they're going to do. And they're going to alienate you from your child by showing this one face to like this parent who is now so concerned because Joyce does say at one point, it's so hard being a single mother and dating. And that's true. And they know that, and they target them. All of my friends who are single parents, because it does happen to men too, but not as often. I always tell them, like, you wait a long time, like 6 months minimum, before introducing that person to your child, because you don't know if you're being targeted. You just don't know. And it's the same thing if you have a teenager. Like, it's the same exact thing.
And the instant the two-faced turnaround, he goes directly from I am going to hurt you to who wants picnic, like who wants a cookie. And that two-faced nature, we've had conversations, had conversations before about how often someone says, oh, they've always been so nice to me. Abusers are not evil all the time. They only show their true selves to their victims. To everyone else, they're perfectly nice and perfectly normal.
They do wonderful things. They might be philanthropists. They might be coaches. They, are great people outside of their home. So one of the things so I work in a domestic violence and sexual assault center. And one of the things we say is, sending them to anger abusers to anger management doesn't work because they are managing their anger. Their victims are how they manage their anger. Everything that goes wrong in their life, they save it up and they aim it at them, even though they have nothing usually to do with it. That's how they manage it. There are other programs that someone can go into. Anger management's not one of them. That'll work. But exactly. So I really appreciate this episode because of Joss Whedon back in the 90s painting such a clear-cut picture. And in this case, you know, we've already hinted at that fact that Ted is a robot, he's a monster, but usually abusers, I won't say always, who knows what's lurking under someone's skin, they could be aliens, but usually they're people, you know.
About how he takes the monsters that teenagers are dealing with in the real world and he makes them into real monsters that they deal with in Sunnydale.
Yes.
And so the very real monster of someone coming in and dating your parent, if you have a single parent or if you have divorced parents, and them actually being an abusive person, is a real world monster that he then paints as the cathartic, you know, Sunnydale Hellmouth monster, Hellmouth robot. And so we get the first view that he's a robot when he says, "I'm not wired that way," to her. Right is right, wrong is wrong. I'm not wired that way. And you're like, "Oh, wired, okay."
Interesting choice of words.
And so, you know, the next, so going through all of this, slight thing going on from that school day, Giles is trying to talk to Jenny again. And Jenny's basically like, "It's been 3 weeks." And he's like, "You need time." She's like, "I need space. Like, you're not giving me space. I can't heal while you're giving me sad puppy dog eyes."
Yeah.
At which point he kind of like wounded walks away. And she was harsh.
Yeah.
She was harsh. And Jenny is always good at calling out the situation, at defining the situation as it is. When he's trying to work up the opportunity to ask her out on a date, and she's like, "Okay, how about a date?" You know, and now when he's trying to work up to talk to her, and she's like, "You're making up excuses to talk to me. Don't go away."
Yeah.
And then she feels bad because, you know, she's like, "Wow, that kind of sucked." And she doesn't want him to leave. Like, you know, she doesn't really want him to leave. She's still just trying to work out mentally in herself, you know, do I want to dabble in the world of monsters? Where,
although when we find, I have a problem with how Jenny acts with all of this because of what we find out later about her. Like, this is nothing really new to her. Like, this, I mean, it is new, but it's something that she should have been prepared for. And the fact that he has something from his past that comes back, she should really be more apathetic towards, because she is, like we learn later, she is actively always lying to him, like by omission. So I have issue with how she is with this because it's very hypocritical in my opinion. Like, yes, obviously she nearly like died, but how mean she's being to Giles is a bit of an overreaction in, like, because of what she's doing herself.
And so we get to the next morning after the golf incident, and Buffy tries to tell her mom that Ted threatened her. And Joyce just says, "No, he didn't. Like, he did not. You were cheating. He caught you cheating, and he was very respectful and didn't tell all your friends and didn't make a scene."
And I think that's quite nice of him.
Yep. And just totally dismissive. And so, you know, Buffy's like, "Well, I need to spy on," and so she gets some information. She finds out where he works.
And keep in mind, Joyce is stuffing her face with sticky buns that Ted has made at this point. Like, I would like to think, had she not been drugged, she would have taken what Buffy said a little more seriously, but we'll never know.
Yeah. And so then Buffy goes and checks out Ted's workspace where he's a salesman, and you can see on the whiteboard that he has like 20 some sales that day, sort of thing.
Yeah. And everyone else has like 4 or 5.
Yep. And he's just manipulating people every which way. And then Buffy looks at his desk, and one of the co-workers says he's engaged, he's taking time off for the wedding, it's scheduled in like 3 weeks.
2 months.
2 months? Okay.
Yeah.
And so Buffy goes and looks at his desk, and there's a picture of Joyce, but she recognizes that picture of Joyce, and we do too, because we had just seen it earlier on their fridge, and she unfolds it, and it's a picture of Joyce and her, and he's folded her under so that it's only a picture of Joyce.
He's cut Buffy out.
Yep.
And so Buffy, scrams out of there, and she had asked Willow to check on him as well. And she sort of was like, I don't know, but she says she'll do it. Because when it comes down to it, that's even drugged. Yeah, even drugged, Willow's loyalties lie with Buffy, and she's not even with computer parts.
Yep.
Which I think she's already received, so that might help.
Throw her friend under the bus for yummy, mini pizzas.
Because earlier in the day, Buffy's mom had said, like, he's making us dinner. I want you home at 6 sharp.
Yep.
So Buffy's there, and she is not happy because, her mother already did not tell her she was dating this man. It's completely possible that her mother's not telling her that she's engaged to this man.
Yep. And so she asked, she's like, are you guys going to get married? And no, why would you think that? And then Ted says, let me step in, and says he's hoping to ask the question, pop the question, and Joyce is all, ooh.
Sometime soon.
Yep.
Which, red flag.
And he asks Buffy how she feels, and she, kind of over dramatic teen. She's like, I want to kill myself, instead of saying, I hate that idea, I don't like you, or anything. Like, I feel like a more rational response would be, I feel like you're moving way too fast and I'm not comfortable with it, instead of...
I think she had a very likely teenage response.
Yes, a very strong teenage response. And she gets told that she can go to her room. And so she goes to her room, and then she sneaks out her window, as she does most nights, as habit, as she has told Angel previously.
To go on patrol.
And there's no vampires for her to, wail on.
Vampires. Here, vampires. Like looking for a dog.
And she climbs back in her room through the window, and Ted is in her room, and he has been going through her things.
And he's sitting in the dark.
Going through her things. Like, her Slayer stuff is like laid out. And he's got her diary in his hand. And gosh, what a gross invasion of privacy and overstepping of bounds. Like, Joyce wasn't reading her diary. So
also, where did Joyce think he was? Like, never ever let someone go through your teenage daughter's stuff.
Yep.
Like, no, especially if it's not something that you yourself would do.
Yeah. And so he reaches out, and he threatens her that if she does not get in line, he is going to have her locked up in a psychiatric unit. And he tries to take her diary as like blackmail. And she says, you're not leaving with that. And he slaps her. And she's like, great, now I can use my Slayer strength. And she just starts hitting him back, and he's hitting her, and she's hitting him. And she overpowers him and knocks him down the stairs. And Joyce is being like, Buffy, stop. Because she's just witnessing what she thinks is her perfect man being wailed on by her daughter. And so then he falls down the stairs and appears to be dead.
Yep.
And Buffy is going through the I killed a person guilt. And I mean, Xander's like, well, obviously he has to be some kind of big bad because Buffy, Buffy does not kill people.
Mm-hmm. That's the only time that Xander gets on the Ted is obviously bad bandwagon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was gonna say, this is actually something that they talk about a lot in Buffy, is that slayers kill demons, but they are not killers. And when we get into the whole situation with Faith in the future, this is going to be a big thing of, does Buffy kill humans, or does a slayer kill humans when it's called for, when it's justified? And Cordelia's like, well, why doesn't she get a special pass, because she's the slayer? And Willa's like, fascism. and like, yeah, fascism. Like, yeah, let's have that.
And thank you, Cordelia. We have your wish now.
Yeah, I know. Cordelia, stop making wishes. When Cordelia's wishes come true, we end up in apocalypse worlds.
Yeah, basically.
So.
Also, when Buffy's at the police station and being questioned, Sarah Michelle Gellar does a really great job of portraying how a victim of abuse is going to react. Because that's what she is. She's not it was a very sped up timeline, but like that's very much so what she is. And when, at the end of the series, there is a shot of a potential slayer who becomes a slayer, who is about to be abused, who or in the process of being abused, and they get slayer strength. And I always think, like, wouldn't that be just so wonderful if that just happened naturally? But
there is a certain amount of catharsis in this episode where, if you have ever been in an abusive kind of relationship and you want to stand up to you envision them as a monster, and you want to stand up to that monster. And, she's just, but she is, you can see the way that she's holding herself, the way that she, and she's wearing her, like, her outfit, her kind of like grunge down overalls, like they're like her pajama bottoms of comfort. This look, to her where she's just so withdrawn and numb and shocked, and she doesn't want to hurt Ted. She thinks Ted was just an abusive guy. She didn't want to kill him, but
she wanted him to go away.
And
the police, they don't tell her that they don't believe her, but it's very apparent, especially the next day, that they do not believe her.
Yeah.
Because they say, like, he couldn't have hit you that hard because she's a slayer, so she
doesn't bruise that easily. But seriously, what the hell? Like, he slapped me. Okay. Like, I've been slapped before and didn't bruise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, slaps don't necessarily bruise. Also, usually abusers, they don't aim for the face. They will aim for parts of the body that are not going to show bruising. So midsections are big, or like higher up on the arms. Maybe not in California, but like places that you're not going to see and places you're not going to want to show people.
Yep. Well, okay. Just the randomness of bruising, because I can't stand it, is like, I have fainted in the past and fallen flat on my face and not had a bruise. And then I've walked into a door jam and looked like I've been mauled. Yeah. And I'm like, and you're like, oh, that bruise looks awful. And I'm like, this is nothing. This was just me walking.
Yeah.
But like, when I collapsed and banged my face off a floor, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Not that you necessarily wanted to have a gigantic bruise on your face, but it's just weird. Yeah.
I'm like, my body hurts so much more from this, something like this major impact, and there's nothing physical showing. And then something that like, I'm like, oh, I must have like brushed up against the bed the wrong way because my thigh is purple.
Yep. Yeah, it's just like, did I have my elbow too hard on my knee or like my leg too much? Because there's a huge bruise. I don't know what happened.
Yep. Well, cops are there interviewing Giles. Cordy's being Cordy. Giles is like, obviously she's upset because she's taken a human life, and Cordy's like, well, yeah, you know all about that. With that guy that you like when you raised that demon and he killed that guy.
And Giles said, yes, let's bring that up at every possible moment.
And then we see Xander go from, I'm so stressed, this is the end of everything, to everything's gonna be fine, little lady. Good.
Because he's down to Cookie.
Because he's down to Cookie. And Willow's like, Cookie? And she's like, let's go examine this cookie.
And before that happens, Giles is actually also packing a bag because he's going to go patrol for Buffy. Yep. Because while she has the ability to, mentally he knows she's not there and will get herself killed.
Yep.
And he doesn't want that to happen. And I think I'm not saying that other Watchers want their Slayers to get killed. I'm just saying that they're psychopaths who won't intervene.
Yep. And so they continue to do research. Willow finds out that they've been putting a drug in the food, and they're like, okay, well, that's evidence of something. But then Cordy comes in and says, marriage licenses, plural, and an address.
Yep.
And so they go to the address, and Xander breaks on in, still high on his cookie drugs. And as this is happening, as they are dealing with looking inside the apartment. And
does that apartment look familiar to you? Like, we see that definitely later on in the show. It's a reused set.
Really?
But I think something in season 3 maybe with Faith. It's not quite, I was like, is that the magic shop? And then I was like, I don't think it's the magic shop. I think we see it again in season 3. So just as we're watching, keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
But yeah, they have a lot happen all at once with 3 different groups, right? Because it's Cordelia, Xander, and Willow investigating Ted's place, and then Jenny has followed Giles out on patrol. And that leads to, Jenny's life then being in danger again, because of course there are vampires that Giles runs into. And so we're going to pan back to the struggle there.
Yep.
And then there's also what's going on at Buffy's house.
Yep. Where she is going to sneak out of the window again because her mom is like, go to your room, I don't
want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to you. She's trying to apologize to her mother, and mother's like, I can't talk about this right now. Go to your room. And she goes up to her room, and she goes to open the window, and the window's been nailed shut. And then she turns around, and Ted's there, not dead. And he starts choking her.
And glitching. He's glitching.
Yep. He does he glitch before she stabs him, or does he start glitching after she stabs him?
I think he was glitching a little before, and I think it gets progressively worse. Because that if you took your laptop and you threw it down a flight of stairs, it's going to glitch a little bit. But if you stab it then on top of it.
And so he knocks her unconscious, and he's not looking so great, but he knocks her unconscious, and he goes back downstairs to tell Joyce he's still alive. He was dead for 6 minutes, and then he was in the morgue all day unconscious and scared an intern, but it's a miracle. He came back. He came back for her.
Clearly that intern is dead.
Like,
Also, I will say that one thing that a lot of people don't realize is most, because it's over half of domestic violence victims do or survivors experience traumatic brain injuries, and usually multiple ones, and this includes strangulation, which both Buffy and her mother received during this one night.
Yep. So we're going back and forth. They're see the bunker. They're like, this doesn't make sense. And Cordy's like, and this rug doesn't match. And so they lift up the rug and they find the like 1950s style underground, which doesn't have. It's got like windows. When you open the windows, it's brick walls or concrete walls.
Yeah, there's no way out.
And then Xander opens up the cupboard and you don't see it, but he closes the cupboard. He's like, we found wives 1 through 4.
Yep. Because Ted's first marriage dates back to 1957, and they're like, he would have had to be in like preschool for that. So they know that like before they found the bodies that there was something afoot. But what they basically find out is Ted's first wife, when he gets sick, leaves him. So he takes and builds robot Ted and goes and gets her back and shoves her in his creepy little bunker. And does it say if he physically dies before that wife?
I think so.
Okay.
I think he did, and then like released Better Ted once he died.
Yeah.
And then Better Ted goes off and Robot Ted, Better Ted.
Yeah. And then he just keeps getting women of the same build, same look, because they all have to fit these clothes. And repeating that pattern. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
What he is.
Ted Bundy?
Maybe that's where the name came from.
Maybe.
Although Ted Bundy didn't work like that at all. He used his significant other as a cover, which is what most serial killers do. But still.
So then, Buffy wakes up from being unconscious. Joyce is noticing that Ted is now glitching. Where at like one point he like turns his head and jerks his head to the side and he's talking about gravy or something like that. And she's like, you need to sit down. And he tells her, I don't take orders from women. I'm not wired that way. And he's just getting more and more like
agitated.
I was going to say patriarchal, like, misogynistic.
Yeah. He's not hiding his feelings anymore. He's,
sentences he uses. Daddy's here. Ew, Daddy's here. And then he says, don't I always tell you what to do?
Yeah.
And like, just back to back to back. Daddy's here. Don't I always tell you what to do? I don't take orders from women. Like, he is becoming more misogynistic and toxic by the second, and Joyce is getting scared.
Oh, yeah. And by the time he says, I don't take orders from women, she's like, I'm over this.
Yep.
Buffy. Like,
and his whole thing, she's like, I want to talk to Buffy, and he's like, don't worry about Buffy, worry about Teddy. Teddy died. Like, ugh. And also calling himself Teddy.
Yeah. And so Joyce is like, well, I'll get you a drink. And he's like, no, we have to leave right now. You're going to love our new home. I've set it all up. And she's like, well, I have to pack. And he's like, I already have all your clothes. And then what he says, like, he basically tells her that, there have been multiple women like her that he has.
I always find you again. I always bring you back,
Yep. And she's not going to go anywhere, so he knocks her out. Like, I'll just carry you then.
And so while all this is happening, Giles is trying to patrol with a crossbow, and Jenny shows up and is trying to talk to him. And he's like, not now. And she's like, yes, now. and
Vampire.
And then vampire. And so then he's grappling with the vampire, and she tries to shoot the crossbow, and the vampire turns with Giles, and Giles gets struck in the back by the crossbow bolt. And then the vampire is laughing so hard that Giles whips the bolt out from his own back like a badass. Yes. And stakes the vampire.
And the vampire even says, "Nice shot, lady," before being staked.
Yep.
To be fair, if I was that vampire, I would also have had a good chuckle.
So yeah, and so like this is the whole reunion thing with Jenny and Giles, where Jenny's like, okay, I can't be mad at you anymore because I just shot you with a crossbow.
And Giles is trying to be like, I'm fine. And then she's like, yep, that's blood. We're going to the hospital.
Yep. So we've got, the Giles and Jenny reconciliation happening in this Monsters of the Week episode. Still dealing with this as an arc issue, but
Monarch,
yes. And that's happening. And Buffy wakes up and she uses the frying pan, which is like the symbol of the 1950s housewife, to beat the hell out of Ted and do the Terminator reveal.
And it's also, so the frying pan to the head too is also like that old cartoon of like a housewife with a frying pan hitting someone.
Was it Punch and Judy? Was that the name of the puppet show?
I think so. It's something Judy, but it was terrible. It was terrible and all about domestic violence.
Yeah, so I think it was called Punch and Judy, and it was like a male puppet and a female puppet, and the female puppet had a frying pan, and the male puppet would punch her, and she would hit him with a frying pan. But yeah, I think it was called Punch and Judy.
It's definitely something in Judy. It would make sense if it was Punch and Judy. But I think also one of the reasons that Joyce...
Mr. Punch and his wife, Judy.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons Joyce, because Ted was gone for, a day, the drugs got out of everyone's systems, minus Xander, who took another bite of the cookie. So Joyce has detoxed. So she doesn't have the blinders on where she's like, where she was willing to just go off with him.
Speaking of drugs, I looked it up. There is no Demetorin, but there is Demetrin. Demetrin is a benzodiazepine derivative. It's a generic drug, brand name of the generic drug Prazepam.
Okay.
And it is used as a mild sedative and anxiolytic. So it reduces anxiety and makes you like slightly sedated. So
I'm pretty sure that's what they prescribed a low dosage for my dog for separation anxiety.
Maybe. It's also used for like IBS.
Interesting.
It stimulates the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which are responsible for mood. It can be a mood enhancer. So I'm guessing they just like mixed around the syllables a little bit for Sunnydale.
Yes. Oh, and the one thing else I wanted to say about the Giles and Jenny thing, I laughed really hard because Giles, I love that man, says, "Oh no, I'm fine because I have layers of tweed on. It's better than Kevlar."
Yep.
It's perhaps the best line in this entire episode. Layers of tweed, better than Kevlar.
So Joyce has decided to swear off men for a little bit after all of this. Now, I'm a little confused, and I wanted to get your take on this. She says, I'm worried he's going to jump out at me, especially what they found in his apartment. The police found in his apartment with like 4 dead wives.
Yeah. And
Buffy says, oh, trust me, he's on the scrap heap. And Joyce seems confused. And Buffy says, of life.
Yeah.
So did Joyce not know he was a robot? Did she just think he was a serial killer?
I think so, yeah.
So,
Because I mean, that's a hellmouthy thing as well.
Do they ever explain to Joyce in the future that she dated a robot?
Not in the show, but maybe like side combo. Hey man.
Do you remember Ted?
Mhm.
He wasn't human.
That's okay though. Xander's dated a ton of non-humans. And he's not a good example of a functioning human being.
And I mean, Willow also dated a robot, so like maybe
Yep.
Willow and Joyce could bond over that. They're
That's true.
non-human male loves.
Hers was also a demon though, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So we end with Buffy walking into the library, or trying to walk into the library, and just being like, nope, because Joyce and Jenny, not Joyce and Jenny, Giles and Jenny.
That's some fanfic. That's some fanfic right there. I'm not sure if Joyce and Jenny even ever meet. They haven't at this point.
I don't know. But yeah, so Giles and Jenny are smooching, and Buffy's kind of like, ew, except like, because first we start this episode with her walking in on her mother figure smooching, and we end the episode with her father figure smooching.
Yep, and I think it's a normal reaction at that point. Like, I'm just not going to walk into any rooms as a teenager.
Yep.
And that is Ted.
And then we move into Bad Eggs.
Oh, God. I do have to say, the music in this episode is fantastic. Like, in some of the scenes that, you know, are like, I noticed it specifically this episode that whoever did the soundtrack for it was really on point. They like got my heart pumping and I knew what was coming. Huh?
For Bad Eggs or for Ted?
Bad Egg.
Okay, yeah. Oh yes. Oh, Bad Eggs. And so, you know, Buffy and her mom are at the mall. Bad Eggs aired January 12th, 1998. So we are now into 98. Like the new year. We made it past 97. So we're into like 98. It's, you know, past Christmas. They're at the mall, but things seem to be closing early. And Buffy's having a little spat with her mom about wanting to get a dress or an outfit. And her mom says, you look like a streetwalker. And she's like, I look like a skinny streetwalker. And
then Buffy's like, that's not going to win this argument.
No, that does not win the argument.
And then it's funny because Joyce says, you know, you're too young for that outfit. And Buffy says, I'll be too young for that outfit until I'm too old for that outfit. And Joyce is like, that's the plan.
Yep. That's the point.
Yeah. Also, you're never too old for an outfit. Also, you're never too old for an outfit, everyone. Wear whatever you want to wear as an adult. But so they're going around the mall. Joyce is like, crap, places are closing. I need my outfit for work, like whatever it's being tailored. And she asks Buffy to go get it and gives her the little ticket. Yep. And Buffy is like, huff, puff, but she goes to go do it. And as she's going down the escalator, going up the escalator, there's this man in a cowboy hat and talking to this woman, like really into her.
Yep.
And Buffy glances to the side and sees in the reflective part of the escalator only the woman. The man is not there. So she knows this is a vampire. So she does a 180 and is after them.
Okay, but I am very confused about the amount of time it takes her to find this vampire in the stocking, because she like wanders down, you know, like a little alleyway in the mall, and she like enters into an arcade, And the guy's trying to talk to the girl, like, turn around, I want to show you something. And she's like, I'm at my high score. How long does it take her to get to her high score on a pinball machine?
She could also be really shitty.
Yeah.
And like she could be a crap player at pinball. She's like, I have 5 points. I've never got this high before.
So then he's like, oh, you got such a pretty neck. And then Buffy's like, you know, get some new lines. And then she's like, honey, you said you would never cheat on me again. And the woman's like, okay, I'm going to peace out. Like, I thought that this, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's a good slick way for Buffy to, you know, clear the area. And she, you know, is about to lay some beat down. And the guy's like, bye, and skedaddles off. And then also, how long does it take? Because then Buffy shows back up, like, where her mom has food, and she's like, ooh, mall food, and, like, has completely forgotten about the dress. But, like, how long did that scenario take? I'm very confused, but anyways, Buffy's like, you got distracted by a boy. Can't you ever be responsible? Can't you ever think about anything else? And Buffy tells the truth. She's like, I think about saving the world from vampires. And her mom's like, yeah, whatever.
I don't know what goes on in your head sometimes.
Yep. And so then we switch to Cordelia and Xander making out in a closet and sniping at each other the entire time. And, like, he's like, don't talk, and she's like, I don't want to look at you, and they're like, this is unhealthy, let's make out some more. And
they're
then,
very self-aware, at least.
Yep. And then, like, they end up on the floor with each other, like, you know. And so then they're in health class, and the teacher is asking to list the negative consequences of having sex. And Xander and Cordy are sniping at each other. And so Cordy is, like, one row up and
a row over.
And then it's Willow, and then it's Xander. And Xander and Cordy are, you know, sniping. And you see Willow clock it.
Yeah.
You see the look in her face. She's like, what is happening here?
Like, this is a little more than their usual hate. And also, it's about sex.
And pointed. They were being very pointed. And so finally she's like, okay, let me give the example, like, that the teacher's looking for, pregnancy. And, and they're like, yes, and so here's your egg. And again, second question, WTF, Xander stands up and he moves as if to ask Cordy to be his partner, completely blowing over Willow.
Yep. Who has been his partner for everything since, like, kindergarten.
Yep. And so Cordy immediately grabs onto someone else. But then instead of turning to Willow, he goes and asks another random girl. And I think this was just a plot device so that Cordy, Willow, and Xander would all have their own eggs.
Yeah. Very much so. Oh my God. Can you imagine if Xander and Willow had teamed up and Xander did to their joint egg what he does to his own egg eventually, Willow would have stabbed him. Like, just straight up would have stabbed him.
Well, so by the time they show up at the library with Buffy and they give Buffy her egg, Willow already has a crib for her egg. Her egg is already in a little crib.
And Buffy is upset because she is a single egg mom. She's like, am I doomed to, you know, have my mother's life? And it's just like, not really, because you're the Slayer, but we'll skim past that. And Willow says, like, my egg is Jewish, because Xander's talking about, like, Christian traditions and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? My egg's Jewish. And Xander's like, I don't know. Teach him that dreidel song.
Yep. Although Willow actually seems to be like, oh, I will.
Yep. Like, oh, yes.
The entire, you know. Anyways,
Yeah.
so then Giles comes out and he's got a book that he nearly squashes Buffy's egg with. And he's like, oh, yes, it's Lyle and Hector Gorge.
The vampires.
They're vampires, yep, of some like ill repute. And he's like, you know, they're brothers, they're blah, 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 like bad. They killed they massacred an entire village of Mexicans. And she's like,
while human.
And he's like, oh, no, that's why they were human. So they're, you know, racist and monsters before they were turned into monsters.
Yeah. Mass killers who were turned into vampires.
Yep.
So I wonder if when like the demon was like coming into their body, they're like, oh man, you can stay here. You got some great ideas.
But yeah, so there's one point where Giles is like, why do you all have eggs?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't respond to him. They just feel like, oh, are you going to go hunting with Angel tonight?
Mm-hmm. Like, so they're probably like, we honestly don't know why we have eggs.
Which I just feel like so many times Giles is like, what is happening with these kids?
Mm-hmm. He's like, what is wrong with the American school system?
Uh-huh.
Back in England, they didn't give us eggs. They gave us those babies that would track stuff, which is what they did at our school. I still remember, like, you had to take that class. It wasn't forced upon people, probably because they didn't have enough of those electronic babies. But there was a computer that would, like, log everything that you did to this thing. And I just remember one of my friends having it and the thing screaming all the time. That person doesn't have children now.
Yeah, I believe.
True story.
I believe you had to sign up for the class, but I believe the guidance counselor nudged certain people towards that class.
Yeah. All of my friends who took that, I don't think any of them have children.
But were they sexually active in high school?
No.
Is that no a yes?
Not that year. I was like sophomore year, maybe.
Was it?
Yeah.
I feel like it was junior, senior year for us that I had people who were taking it.
Maybe. I don't remember. 16. Maybe it was junior. If it was junior year, then yes, they were sexually active. And now they're in their 30s and childless, all because someone gave them a crying doll.
Yep. I love you. You're like, no. We shall talk about teen sex very soon in this episode, Sabrina. I'm not letting you off the hook.
I was not in that class. I didn't have to. I had to deal with the nonsense through my friends. I didn't have to deal with because I would have just failed it. I would have been like, I don't care enough.
So, Buffy is hardcore smooching with Angel, and they are getting
hot and heavy.
Physical. Yep, they are getting more physical. Mm-hmm. And they're not slaying. Like, they're just not slaying.
They're not even aware they're being watched by vampires.
Yep. And so then Buffy goes home and she goes to bed. And while she's sleeping, the egg pokes out this like tentacle finger that then turns into a tentacle hand that then attaches to her face.
Yeah. And watching the episode, I'm like, what was the point of this? Because like Buffy wakes up and she's tired and cranky. And the only thing I can assume is that the first night it weakens you, so you can't fight it the next day. That's the only thing I can figure.
Also needs life force to grow.
Oh yeah.
Like it needs to go from baby in the egg to like grown little
lobster thing. It's shaped like a lobster.
I was gonna say scorpion.
Oh, I just think because it's fatter. It has like a lobster tail, but definitely the scorpion top. It's like if a scorpion and a lobster had a hellion.
Like a face hugger, okay? It just looks like a face hugger.
Yeah, it's something that you don't want to deal with, really. But
Yep.
so in the morning, also when the egg looks normal, like it
Yep.
glued itself back in,
Yep.
and it's like voila, Humpty Dumpty back together again, and off she goes to school after sniping at her mom.
Yep. And drinking her mom's coffee.
Yeah. Oh, and she calls her egg Egbert.
Egbert. Yep. Egbert the egg. I like it.
Which is a great name that she wasted on a demon.
And so we see, Buffy and Willow are weak and they like have little energy, and Xander's fine. He's like, yay, hooray, whatever. And so he's helping Giles with organizing the stacks while they're sitting.
Because their sex ed class has been canceled because no one can find
Mr. Whitmore. Yep. Yeah. Mr. Whitmore is missing. So they're all sitting there. And
Xander's throwing his egg.
Yep. And he reveals that he has hard boiled his egg, which is cheating. And he's like, no, it's like taking a shortcut in a race. And they're like, that's also cheating.
I mean, so they would definitely, if the egg were an egg, they would definitely take and check to make sure students hadn't done that.
Yeah.
But I would also, like, if it was my child that did that and they failed that, I would definitely be the person who would be like, I need to see where it says that they can't do it. Because otherwise, they pass your stupid little test with an egg.
Did you ever do the egg drop challenge in class?
Yes, that sounds very familiar.
So you had to make sure an egg survives
a drop, yeah.
And you were given a specific egg. You could use whatever practice eggs you wanted, but you were given a specific egg, and the teacher signed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when it was dropped at the end, after she's checked that her egg is the one that she signed is the one that you drop, afterwards they crack it to make sure that it's not
hard-boiled.
Yep. Hard-boiled. So
was it Mr. Montrose that did that? I don't know.
It might have been Mr. Montrose or Mr. Mott.
I think they taught the same year. So it was.
I had Mr. Mott freshman year, Mr. Montrose sophomore year.
Okay, I had. Oh wait, no, sophomore year. Sorry, yeah. Freshman year, I had. I don't remember what his name was, but he was a very tall man, and he wouldn't let us say Uranus. We had to say Ursinus.
Okay, but both of those are wrong because it's Uranus.
Correct. But I just remember we were not allowed, we had to say Ursinus. And that is the only thing I remember from freshman year science class.
Luckily, I remember more from freshman years.
So I'm thinking it was sophomore year that we did the egg drop because I loved that class. Mr. Montrose and his cockroaches. He had the cockroaches. He had a big terrarium filled with cockroaches, and during my class, the mother cockroach died, and it was very sad. Or we discovered her corpse anyway, and we had a little cockroach funeral. Science class was weird, man.
He didn't have those up my year. He did have Venus flytraps.
Oh, he didn't have those my year.
And the cockroaches must have come after. But I remember, like, he would show us feeding the Venus flytraps and how you would stimulate the different parts of the mouth to get it to close.
That's really cool.
But anyways, back to Buffy. Taking a little detour.
Right.
Egbert.
Yes, Egbert.
So
they're in the library.
Xander's cheating. We see another egg in the stacks. As Giles is putting away a book, there's an egg kind of like chittering behind the books. Yes. And
Cordelia comes on into the library and lets everyone know the reason the class was canceled was because the teacher is missing. And she was like, and they were like, yeah, so, and she was just like, it's the Hellmouth. We should check closets, Xander.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she says checking the closet, Xander's like, whoop, whoop, yes, let's go. And that's when Buffy and Willow are like, do they seem odder than normal?
Well, Buffy doesn't. Willow does. Willow's like, did they seem like weirder than usual? Because again, she's clocking. Something's going on with these two. So next night, Buffy is smooching with Angel again. She mentions her egg. Angel's like, huh? And then she's like, well, yeah, I haven't really thought about kids. And he's like, I'm sterile because I'm a vampire. And he asks her, don't you think about the future? And she gives this line that is such 16-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
She says, when I look into the future, all I see is you. Yeah. All I want is you. And
mm-hmm.
Which is such 16-year-old girl mid-makeout scene.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I'm sure a 16-year-old boy mid-makeout scene is only thinking about whoever they're making out with, too. I don't think that their brain goes very further than 5 minutes from that. But yeah, Buffy apparently had not ever thought about the fact that vampires cannot reproduce that way. They can only reproduce through fangs.
Yep.
Because she gives Angel this whole speech about how, and again, it's not very realistic either. I mean, we do know that there is one Slayer much later on who, like, we learn about her, who has a kid, but it's not very great for the kid. Because can you imagine being pregnant and being the Slayer? Like, oh, Jasmine, I think you're frozen. Oh, no. There you go. Okay, so yes. Imagine having to be pregnant and slay vampires. Like, what if you go into the labor mid-slay?
Well, I think that you're going to have to take, like, Slayer maternity leave. Just be like, look, there are entire chunks of time when there's no called Slayer, or like,
mm-hmm.
We're just going to have to wait a little bit, okay?
Yeah. Because Watchers seem like they're so understanding.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not Giles. So I can't, like, depending on, like, the Watcher, I feel like the Slayer's not even allowed to have sex. Honestly, like, do you think Kendra
was not allowed to talk to boys?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think Kendra, I would put money on the fact that Kendra is a virgin. Like, so the fact that Buffy is still, like, even considering, like, the idea that she can have children is a little surprising, because it's also one of those things, like, is it really responsible to have children? Because they're going to be in constant danger. Mm-hmm. Like, the odds of that baby making it to adulthood are not likely unless you die early. And also, they can't have a vampire father. Like, they just physically can't. Yeah. So Buffy has not thought any of that through and is very taken aback by it, which is strange. I think
Angel kind of sends her home. He's like, why don't you go home? I'll finish up. I'll keep patrolling. And she's like, love. So she goes home. She crawls into her window, which is now unnailed. And crawls into her window. And she sees her egg is doing something. And she's like looking at it, and it bursts open and facehugger attacks. And she picks up an iron and is like waiting for it, looking for it. It attacks her again. She flips it off of her. She grabs sewing shears. Why does she have sewing shears? Like,
maybe Buffy also likes to do a little sewing.
maybe she was making the crib for the egg.
Maybe.
So she grabs sewing shears and it's crawling up the wall behind her, and she stabs it and she takes it off the wall and she gives it a good old beating with the scissors. And then she immediately calls Willow.
I'm assuming Willow has her own phone line.
I think so. Well, possibly for the computer.
Yeah, that's how mine was.
Calls Willow, and Willow's like, everything's fine. My egg's an egg. It's in, it's in the fridge. It's fine. It's an egg. And so she's like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. She hangs up, and we see Willow's egg has actually hatched, like all purple gooiness, and Willow's kind of dead looking,
Yeah.
like dead-eyed, deadpanning.
She's been taken over by the egg.
Yes. And then Joyce walks in the room and she's like, why are you dressed? Where are you going? Who were you on the phone with? It is too late at night. This is not okay. Mm-hmm. Followed by, like, you were grounded. You were going to go to the library after school. You're going to wait for me. So Buffy exits the car and she's talking with Willow, who seems totally normal, except that we see underneath her shirt tendrils of the monster, the baby, the egg. Willow's egg burnt.
Yes. And Xander at the same time has decided, screw it, he's hungry. He's going to crack open and eat his egg.
Uh-huh.
He's a terrible father. So
wait, before this happens, Buffy is asking Cordelia if anything happened with her egg, and Cordelia says one of the most awkwardly racist things. She's like, I gotta go. Shanice, is that your real hair?
Oh, yeah.
What? All right, so
Shanice is a black woman, and one of the very few black students apparently at Sunnydale High, from what I can see.
So I'm trying to create a backstory in my head for why this has happened. And the best I can come up with is that Shanice has been wearing a weave all school year, maybe a hot pink one. And she has taken her weave out for the first time and is letting her natural hair show. And Cordelia is just so excited to see her friend going natural. Nope, I can't do it. So then Xander freaks out with his egg.
Yeah, because he goes to eat it and he has hard-boiled a demon.
Yep.
So they know there's at least 2 eggs, and it would seem very random if it was just those 2.
Yep. And so Cordy is with them, with Xander and Buffy, and Willow shows up and she says, Giles says to get started without him. And you see the demon egg poking out of the back of Cordy's bear. She's wearing one of those bear backpacks. I actually had one of those in middle school. But my grandmother had bought one for me and one for my little sister. And she got my little sister a dog one, and she got me one that was a little pig, but she thought it was a dog. And like, pigs are kind of verboten in Arabic culture, so we had to pretend the pig was a dog. Pinky, my pink dog backpack.
That's wonderful. Now.
So
I'm sure then you were giving like Miriam the side eye, like.
So Miriam had this like adorable little Dalmatian puppy one, and I had a pig. But you know what? I ended up loving my pig, and now I don't eat pork products because I know that pigs are so smart.
Not because of the backpack.
Not because of the backpack. but yeah. So anyways, that's a little side story into Jasmine's background. Mm-hmm. So the creepy thing's coming out the back of the eyes, and we see Cordelia kind of tipping over in the background.
Yep.
And as she's tipping over in the background, Willow says the offspring probably took over Mr. Whitmore's body to go back to the Mother Bazaar. And they're like, Mama, like, what's going on? And at that point, Cordelia, now possessed, smacks, she smacked Buffy? I think she knocks out Buffy, and Willow knocks out Xander.
Yep.
And she like hardcore like slams.
Damn.
Yep. And then they and several other students lock Buffy and Xander with 2 eggs in a closet, in the same closet that Xander was making out with Cordy with previously. And
they go off to find the Mother. What is
Mother Bazaar? So
Mother Bazaar.
Mother Bazaar is in real life, it's a medical thing. It's all the things that your body does not digest can get stuck in your stomach or in your intestines. And so it's like a conglomeration of like hair and tissue and like cartilage and stuff like that. Things that you shouldn't have eaten, or dogs shouldn't have eaten, or whatever. Like certain birds get them as well, and it just kind of sticks there in your stomach until either you die or you throw it up.
Like on My Strange Addiction, the woman who ate the couch.
That's
hers would have been filled though with couch.
Yes. I'm like, what you're talking about there is, a small stony constriction that may form in the stomachs of certain animals, especially ruminants like cows, which was once used as an antidote for various ailments. So that was also, I think, wasn't that one of the cures from Harry Potter? Was you get a bazaar to use it as a cure for certain poisons? You shove a bazaar down their throat? Isn't that what they shoved down Ron's throat during the Half-Blood Prince?
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah, a stone-like mask taken from the stomach of a goat. And Harry uses it to kind of cheat at potions, and then to save Ron's life. But anyways, so they go off to go back to the Mother Bazaar and harvest her eggs to then send out.
And in the meantime, Joyce has shown up at the library looking for Buffy, who is not in the library. She never made it there.
Yep. And Giles looks normal at first, and Joyce is just complaining, and she's like, I don't want to say it's a burden. No, I want to say it's a burden. Like, she's saying Buffy's a burden. Yeah. Teenage daughters. And she turns around, and as she turns around, Giles attaches a baby bazaar onto her back. And then the two of them, now that he's done his duty, have gone down to join Mama Bazaar.
Also, why does this school have so many tools for digging up Mama Bazaar? Like,
maybe Mr. Whitmore like went and got some and brought them.
That's a possibility. But yeah, so, and of course, what we haven't touched on were the Texas brothers, who are hanging out in a sewer, and the one saying like, you know, like the one that Buffy didn't run into, the not as smart brother, saying like, yeah, is like, we should totally be in like a motel or something. And the other one's just like, no, Slayer. And then they start fighting in the tunnel. But they, you know, they're very confused why they saw Angelus smooching with the Slayer. And then, so they've been stalking Buffy, waiting for the right time. This is the right time, they feel, to attack.
So then we see Jonathan. So Buffy wakes up with Xander, and Xander's like, I have a bump. I have a peninsula. And growing from my forehead. And they squish the 2 eggs that are in the room with them, or Buffy does. Xander kind of goes, bad, bad, bad. And Buffy's like, kill. And smashes them with a toolbox. Again, toolbox in the closet. Like, okay. I guess it was a maintenance tool, like a maintenance closet that they were in. And then they are looking up information because they remember that Willow said what it was.
Yes.
And they're like, a bozo? No, a bazaar. And then they're like, well, Giles said he was going to look something up. And of course, Giles has just left the book right there for them, open to the right page. It's like, yep, there we go, bazaar, okay. Then they hear Jonathan screaming. Jonathan, who we've been seeing for a while now, and is showing up again. Little Jonathan.
I think he's one of the few, I think he's the only reoccurring random Sunnydale High student really at this point, because we haven't seen Harmony that much this season. It's just Jonathan really that has a name and is like, hello.
Yep. I mean, we see Harmony every once in a while, but mainly it's Jonathan that we're seeing multiple times. And Devin, we've started seeing more and more now. And then Oz, but Oz is not yet. Yeah.
And he's not random.
Yep.
But yeah, so Jonathan's screaming for help.
And then he's fine because the thing has neurally clamped him. They use neural clamping to take control of the hosts. So they follow. And Xander is pretending to be a host to go get the eggs because they're packing the eggs to get ready to like ship them out. Now this scene is very much Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There are several scenes in both the original and in remakes where you see them with the pods for the Body Snatchers. They have these pods. They're almost like giant watermelons basically. And you can see them shipping out the pods to go to other cities and other areas. And you know that's what they are doing. Also very Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the tentacles going onto the faces. Yeah. These two episodes definitely pulled from like 1980s monster films or like horror films. Because there was a movie called Stepfather that was also very, like similar to Ted, but that came out, I think it was 1996. I looked it up earlier. 1987. 1987 was the Stepfather. So, I feel like they did pull from these both a little bit. And so Buffy is going to go get a weapon to defeat Mama Bazaar, and the Gorch brothers show up.
And she's just like, this is not a good time. And they're like, it's the perfect time. And they had to have had some sort of idea that, something eggy was going on since they've been stalking, but apparently not enough of an idea to stay away.
Yep. And like Tector, nothing happened. Well, a random comment about Lyle. Lyle is doing this thing that I have seen so many cowboy boys do, where he's got the big belt buckle and he's like framing the belt buckle with
the thumbs.
Like drawing attention to, this is where my penis is.
In case you didn't know.
Here is my ginormous belt buckle, just right here. And he does like the kind of like crotch, like thrust talking with her. And I was just like, oh, Lyle. But then of course Tector goes and is like, hello, pretty monster, and gets eaten. And Buffy and Lyle are just watching as Tector gets dragged in, screams, and dies. And Lyle's like, this is all your fault. And Buffy looks at him.
Like, what?
How?
And now, like, everyone's trying to fight them. So Buffy has to worry about trying to slay this vampire and not accidentally slay any of these people who have been taken over.
Yep. And so while this is going down, Xander has cornered Cordelia, and he's like, I don't want to fight you. And she hits him on his bump, and he screams. And he's like, that was my bump. And like starts attacking her, which have you ever like accidentally had someone hit a sore spot and without even thinking you like smack them?
Yeah. That's my bump.
I've definitely done that where like someone's like stepped on my foot or something and I'm like, bah!
Yeah, it's an automatic like reaction of like, owie, get away from me.
And so it's just the way that he like shrieks, he's like, I'll kill you, that's my bump. Yes, I had a good guffaw over that. A guffaw. And meanwhile, Buffy gets grabbed by Mama Bazaar, but she goes down with a pickaxe, and you just hear shriek, squelch, shriek, slump, and then Buffy crawls back out, and the Bazaar is dead. And you can tell because its eyes closed. Its eye closed. Mm-hmm. One eye, just one singular eye.
And all the children just go bloop.
Yes. Now this does not make evolutionary sense. For most species that have a queen or have like a mother, there are several that are born that have the capability of becoming a mother. And there's, one of the first things the mother does after creating workers, she has a couple of workers, but then she creates those that are capable of becoming queens themselves. And they're hormonally suppressed until, she dies. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they will leave the colony and go start their own colony. But like the fact that this one dies and immediately all the babies die, that's not good demon evolution.
Well, maybe this demon was a narcissist and just viewed their offspring as like literal extensions of themselves. So when they die, so when the mother dies, since they're just extensions, they die as well.
So now we can have a conversation about narcissistic parenting.
Don't do it.
It ends badly for everyone. Mm-hmm. You want your offspring to survive and thrive without you.
Yes.
So, so then Lyle just runs off. He's like, hell with this, although we will see him again in the future. Mm-hmm. And as the students are leaving school, Giles is like, it was gas. It was a gas leak. Just gas leak. You're fine. Breathe in fresh air. Go home.
And then he turns and he's like, so what was it really?
Mm-hmm. And Xander's like, I'll fill you in tomorrow. But at the same time, he's telling, like, Willow's like, did I really hit you on the head? And he's like, yes. And then Cordelia's like, and I hit you in the head? And he's like, yes, everybody hit me in the head. Like, mm-hmm. Poor Xander's head.
It explains a lot about him. And then, Buffy's mom comes around and is like, Buffy, I was so worried. There was a gas leak. And she's like, I was in the gymnasium. And her mother loses it on her. Because she wasn't in the library.
Yep. And so Buffy ends up confined to her room. Mm-hmm. And the next thing we see, she's, for the third time this episode, making out with Angel. But then we find out that she's still in her room. She's just leaning out the window, and Angel is on the rooftop smooching with her. And so now is the time when we talk about 16-year-old hormones and sexually active teenagers.
I'm glad you said hormones for a second, and I would have been shocked if you had said this, but I thought when you were winding up, I was like, is she about to say 16-year-old whores?
16-year-old hormones.
It's like, that doesn't seem like Jasmine.
Okay, I want you to just go back in your brain to how horny you were at 16. Like,
I don't want to think about being 16.
the hormones were so intense that, like, think about seeing that guy you liked or that girl you liked from across the hallway, and it's like your entire body came alive.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing them for like the 5-minute interchange in between classes. Or did you ever have a closet makeout or a...
No closet makeout, sadly. Or, based on how many tools are in those closets. Good thing I didn't, I guess.
Well, but I definitely had a music room. So the music storage room where we stored all our violins and everything.
I was just in choir, so I had no idea about that.
Did you have any behind the school, No?
I guess I was just I can't say I was a good kid, but like when it comes to that,
I
but
remember you at the teen center, so you can't back out of that.
Yeah, but never at school, really.
I think because I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend or girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
the only time I could see a romantic interest was at my after-school activities or at the teen center. So.
Oh, yes. I was allowed to have a significant other. I think in order, because my mother remembered what she was like at my age, so she wanted to keep as much communication there as possible, so I didn't make stupid decisions. One of the more innocent but stupid things that she did was she wasn't allowed to get her ears pierced. So her and her friend got a needle and some ice, and on her 13th birthday pierced her ears, and it went fine for the first one, but on the second one the needle broke off, and literally until the day she died she had a piece of broken needle in her ear.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You could have had that removed by any dermatologist, really, at any time.
She could have, but
But you didn't.
Yeah, it became part of her and her story.
But so anyways, we are ending Bad Eggs with, this entire episode was about like teenage lust and teenage hormones and how it affects, decision making and priorities. But we definitely see, again, as the arc, we see that Buffy and Angel are getting more physical, and she is falling in love.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't like adult love, this is teenage love.
Lusty love.
Which in some ways I feel is more intense. Like that first head over heels romance. What is the song? The first cut is the deepest.
Yeah.
Like that first romance where, and there are times where you're like, oh, I dated that person, but it wasn't really a relationship. That first relationship,
mm-hmm.
that means something. So
yeah. Agreed.
So we are seeing this, and that means that we are coming up on surprise.
Right. Yeah.
So we have surprise and innocence that are coming up in the next, the next episode.
Yes.
And this is a big one.
Yes. No monster of the week there.
Nope, no monster. We are now back into full-on arc.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say that these were more monarchy, right? Because it's building the relationship with Xander and Cordelia, Buffy and her mother, Jenny and Giles, and Willow's just being her awesome self.
Willow. All right. Thank you so much for just Jossin with us today.
It's always a pleasure jossing about.
All right. And we'll see you next week.
Next week.